afternoon, everyone. Now, I think, first of all, thank you for being part of this conference. And for me, it's always very heartwarming to be able to come back to Singapore and to be able to meet with the tech community, mainly because I think, the amount of tech talent that we have in Singapore is just amazing, right? And if I was giving this talk, or, many of the talks that I've been giving in the past, I would have chosen a topic that talks about, what is the state of art in data and AI. And I think over the many years, whether I'm, running products or whether I'm with customers and so on and so forth, I realize there are frequent questions that might be top of your mind as well, right? One is, for any kind of data and AI projects that you're leading or that you're part of, what makes a successful project and how do you ensure that, you set up yourself and your team for success? And so today, I'm not going to talk about the state-of-art machine learning models. I'm not going to talk about the state-of-art databases and so on and so forth. I just wanted to cover the heart of data and AI, right? And about the whys. Why, for every project that we do, whether it's a data and AI or data and AI combined project, putting people at the center of everything we do matters. And then I'm going to share with you the hows, right? Distilling a lot of the kind of learnings that I had and my team had over the years on why, if you do not just look at, trying to fit problems to the technology that you're going to use, but rather keeping people and outcome at the center of everything is so important, and how do you go about doing it? And finally, I'm going to cover the what, right? Why the heart of data and AI matters. And of course, finally, with the help of the MC, I'm going to take your questions as well. Now, before I get into the meat of things, I just want everyone to pause. Pause for a few seconds. Think about the data and AI projects that you have worked on, whether it's in the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Think about them. What went well? And which are the projects that did not deliver the outcomes that you and your team are expecting? Now, this talk is really for you, right? It's for us as well to be able to exchange our knowledge, but more importantly, to think about all these projects that we've been working on and what are the ingredients for success. And as I shared, when we started the talk, I deeply believe that to achieve the successful outcome that we all want in the projects that we do, it always starts with the people. The people whom you're building this data and AI solutions for, and to take care of the team as well, right? The talent, whether it's the engineers, whether it's the designers, whether it's the data scientists, data engineers, that work relentlessly behind the scene to make things happen. Now, let me give you an example, right? For many of us, we might be familiar with this person, Florence Nightingale, right? She's a very successful healthcare practitioner, and the impact that she made on healthcare is just phenomenal. Now, but did you know that Florence is not just an excellent healthcare practitioner, she is also an excellent statistician. She believed in using a data-driven approach to drive successful outcome. And you see this really amazing quote that she had. And she has many of these quotes, right? And this is one of the quotes that appear in the Journal of Statistics Education, Volume 12, that says that I had begun to see that good quality data, properly interpreted, can be a power for good in all areas of medicine and health. Now, this was made many, many, many years ago, but don't you think that this is still true today? Now, and for many of you, that have worked with visualization, you have done pie charts, bar charts, and all kinds of fun charts that you have, right, to communicate the data that you have. This diagram is really called the Nightingale-Rose diagram, right? And for many, as you work on your projects, you might have used different variants of it. And in this diagram, you see a circle or multiple circles divided into wedges. And this really shows the number of annual fatalities at the front line between April 1854 to March 1856. Now, why is this important? It's because Florence worked really, really hard together with her colleagues, both the healthcare colleagues as well as the data practitioners, way before we talk about the term data scientists, to collect the data, to deeply analyze the data, and to use this to drive actionable outcome. And in fact, she was so successful, after 3 months, after she arrived at the war front line, they managed to drove down mortality rate from 43% to 2%. And this is really an example of data-driven outcome with a focus on people. Now, what are the kind of actions taken as a result of this work? Right, they improved sanitary conditions at the hospital, the few hospitals. They provided laundry for washing linens, and that was all it takes to reduce the mortality rate. And that's also one of the reasons why keeping people at the center of everything we do is so, so important. Now let's think about it, right? If she's still with us today, let's reflect on her journey, or your own journey. What will she do today? Now, it turns out that good news is today, right, we have very powerful visualization tools, right, from different vendors. And what you see here is simply an example of a report, right, leveraging Power BI that drew the Nightingale row diagram rendered using R code. Now, this is essentially R code running in Power BI reports that allows you to drive similar diagrams. And the point here is not really the tool. The point here is today, unlike Florence, right, we have powerful tools at our disposal, and that allows us to drive actionable outcomes. And so let's start off this talk by talking about what does it mean to keep people at the center of everything we do, and why this is important. And I'm going to share with you 3 stories on data and AI projects that my team, my good friends at Microsoft has worked on that focus on the people, right, and why we're empowering people to be able to achieve more. Now, the first project is really empowering farmers. And as many of you know, and I see some of you in the audience, right, that spend a lot of time on agri-tech, precision agriculture, and so on and so forth. Today, it is very important, right, for us to be able to grow enough food to feed the population on Earth. Empowering farmers to achieve more with agri-tech, precision agriculture is so important. And for many of you that have been following this scene, Farm Beats was a project that we did many years ago. The more recent release of this is a project called Farm Vibes. Right, and this is really a project that helps farmers or empower farmers with digital technology. Now, this was done by an amazing guy at Microsoft Research called Ranveer Chandra, and it uses data that's collected through drones, sensors in the farm, and more, and leveraging machine learning approach to deeply fuse the data together to help farmers determine when they should sow, right, when they should harvest, and which part of the farm is more fertile than the others. And other fun things that came out of it is, where the cow dungs are on the farm as well. Now, today, Farm Bikes, just about a few months ago, the code is completely open source, which means every one of us in the room, in the region, can leverage the code and the outcome of the work driven by Ranveer and his team, right, to empower farmers to achieve more. Now, just as a fun fact, right, for example, Ranveer and his team have been working with farmers in Andhra Pradesh, in India, where they grew groundnuts. And just using the earlier version of it, right, they were able to increase the harvest by a significant amount. Now, people at the center of everything we do. Now, the next project I wanted to share is really another project that I worked on personally, right, a few years ago, which is empowering land planners. Now, think about it, right? In Singapore, land is scarce. You want to make sure that you have good place for, greeneries, a lot of the natural reserve, and so on and so forth. But you also want to make sure that you do good urban planning. Now, and this is not just in Singapore, but in every part of the world, land planning is so, so important. Now, and years ago, together with one of my co-workers, Lucas Jopkas, right, he used to be Microsoft X Chief Environment Officer. We founded the AI for Earth Data Science and Engineering team. And AI for Earth at that point in time, 5 years ago, was a multi-year project that focused on using AI to solve some of the Earth's toughest sustainability challenges. Now, I was proud and also humbled by the kind of projects that we see with all the non-profits that we work with. Now, and it turns out that this is a fun problem. Why? Now, in one of this AI for Earth project that we work on, we work with a group called the Chesapeake Bay Conservancy team in the US on using AI to perform land cover mapping. Now, if you reflect on it, why is this interesting and why is AI relevant here? Now, today, if you look at Chesapeake Bay on the map, the Chesapeake Bay watershed occupies a huge area. Now, from an imagery data alone, right, the high-resolution image, which is 4-band, which is RGB and near-infrared, is about 2 terabytes. Now, if you get land planners, experts in being able to know, hey, is this water, is this vegetation, is this land, and so on and so forth, to manually create this map, the land planning map, and to understand land cover usage, it will probably take about 18 months or more. Now, the fun part is, after you have all this data, you get experts to come in, to figure out, hey, which are the land, the water, the vegetation, and more. 18 months later, the landscape could have changed. It could have changed a lot. Now, how can we do this much faster? And the good news is, today, we all have access to commercial satellite imagery. Now, with a very modest cost, you can actually purchase satellite imagery from many of these startups and imagery providers, if you will. And so in this project, we did exactly that, right? We partnered with ESRI or ESRI to get 4-band imagery. And with that, we automated the creation of the land cover map. And just as a fun fact, right, we took this approach. We started with the Chesapeake Bay Conservancy. We trained the models, and then we took the same model, we applied to the entire map of the United States. It took us less than 10 minutes to color every single pixel on the map, with whether it is green, whether it's blue, and so on and so forth, right? And deep learning approaches, and for many of you practitioners in the room, segmentation approach was used to cover every single pixel of satellite imagery. Now, fascinating work. And to put this in perspective, this is just an artist's impression of the type of imagery that we created using the segmentation algorithm. And today, in fact, many of this work that I'm sharing with you today has evolved. Today, we are starting to build what we call the planetary computer, which is really this computer that is in the cloud that will take data from all sensors from all around the world in order to make sense of the world, but more importantly, provide land planners, right, with automated maps that can be created. Now, fascinating work. Now, the final story I wanted to share is how we're empowering creators. And for many of you in the room, they have been catching and some of the trends that's happening within the machine learning fields. You might have heard of large models. You might have heard about the recent progress made in generative AI. Or, in some of these tech magazines or tech newsletter, you might have heard of this model called the DALL-E model. Now, as a product guy, I'm always very excited about the possibilities of what happens when you use AI responsibly and fusing this into the products that we build, right? And as an example, right, in order to empower creators to create, leveraging the power of the DALL-E model, just a month ago, we announced the availability of Microsoft Designer, where with a few simple descriptions that you see on the screen, the underlying DALL-E model and variants of it will help you create the content and thereby empowering the creators, the designers, to achieve more and to be more efficient on what they're doing. Again, this is really a good example of people at the center of everything we do. Now, let's talk about some of the learnings from many of the projects that I've worked on that focus on the people, and let's talk about data. Now, as practitioners, let's talk about why it's important to be curious about the data and always asking the right questions. In many of these projects that I've worked on, in fact, I'm sure you have the same experience as well. It doesn't talk about the algorithms. It doesn't talk about, what kind of solutions you're going to build. You often start off with, where is my data? Often the data that's needed to train your machine learning models are somewhere in the data sprawl in the company. And even starting off with answering the question, where is your data stored? Do you understand every single field and column of your data? Is so important. Now, as we all know, right, as all machine learning or data science practitioners, you know, having a subject matter expert in the room in this journey matters. Now, once you have the data, you should work with your project stakeholders to make sure that you're asking the right questions. Are you measuring what you and your team cares about? What outcomes will it drive? Remember, the outcome will always focus on the people and the outcomes that will affect the people. Now, just to give you an example, asking the right questions. Today, you might have heard a lot of different kind of machine learning techniques and so on and so forth. But if you look at it and map to the kind of questions that you can ask, whether you are a machine learning person or an aspiring machine learning person or a data scientist, if you ask how much, how many is really a regression problem. If you ask what category is a classification problem, and so on and so forth. Now, put this in perspective. Let's take a look at a predictive maintenance example. First, you have the usage and conditions data for the equipment that you want to service. Now, using machine learning approach, you want to predict the remaining useful lifetime for the equipment. Why? Because you want to empower the people. Who are the people here? The people are the servicing technician that you send down to service the equipment before they break down. And that's why it is important for you to build the predictive model. And so if you distill and put all this together, like we've talked about being curious about the data, asking the right question, in all the projects that I've worked on, if you keep people at the center of everything you do, but more importantly, understanding the metrics, the qualitative metrics that you want to establish with a focus on people is actually the best start. Now, be clear about the baseline so that you can communicate to your business stakeholder the before and the after. Now, you get all of this right, the rest of the project is just execution. And what I've seen in many projects is that if you start off by focusing on how your algorithm is state of art or trying to fit your technology to the problem, you will definitely fail. Starting with the people, know what you want to measure, understanding your baseline is in fact one of the best ingredients for success. Now, put all this together in different kind of scenario across different industry, whether it's an energy analyst all the way to a product owner, what kind of data questions you should ask, and what kind of key decision it should drive. Now, finally, we talk about focusing on the talent and the team. Now, this diagram might be very familiar to many of you, right? Whether you're an app developer, whether you're a data scientist or engineer, right? Today, app developers knows how to write code to build an application. Machine learning people, the data scientists, the data engineers, know how to train a model. Often, these are two separate teams. You assume that the model thrown over the wall would already be able to be consumed by the app developer. Now, it turns out that the integration effort is much more complex than that. The development stack is complex, and data scientists and app developers have different trainings, different point of view. And therefore, if you want to be able to make sure that the models that are trained, right, can be consumed and be used by the end user, it's important to fuse the team together, but to make sure that they appreciate each other's perspective, and to make sure that whether it is training a model or building the app, it is all part of the CI/CD process, right, that we are all familiar with from an engineering perspective. Now, putting things together, there are really 3 stages, from experimentation to dev to ops. And each one of these stages is important. Now, you need to empower the team on the same engineering system in order to empower them to drive frequent experimentation. And you want to make sure that you are able to bring data ops and ML ops all together, and making sure that the team, whether it's the data, the AI, or the app talent, to have the necessary training to, of course, advance their knowledge, but more importantly, enable them to fuse together as one team and not as 2 or 3 siloed teams. Now, putting things in perspective, the heart of data and AI is really very simple. It's really focusing on the people and the outcome. Now, whether you fall into a designer camp, the data engineer camp, the app developer camp, and so on and so forth, I think being curious about the data is always important, and asking the right question. Bringing the talent and the team together is important. And therefore, if you take all of this together, and if there's one thing that I'm going to leave you with as you walk out of this conference room today, is the heart of data and AI is really, people. The people in which you are building the apps for, the people in which you are training the models where you are going to drive a specific outcome is important. Now, getting the data, the right data, asking the right question is important. And the team is all that matters. Now, if you bring all of these 3 together, you will deliver the impact that you are hoping for. Now, to summarize all that we have talked about today, if you recall, right, for every one of us in the room, whether you started off with a computer science degree or you took other kinds of training, and so on and so forth, remember the time when you got your first laptop or your computer. Remember when you first write your first code. This morning, we see a lot of code on Hello World, right? Remember, the excitement, for me, as a data guy, when the first version of a database came out that has specific feature that you're interested in. Now, all those it's almost like first love, right? And therefore, I felt like the heart of data and AI is really about fueling your heart and making sure that your passion for technology and how it started is going to continue to guide you through this entire data and AI journey through your career. Now the question here, which I'm going to leave everyone with is, how will you use this passion for technology for the people that you serve, right? And use technology for good. And with that, I just want to say a huge thank you. But I think from today's onward, hopefully, when you do your data and AI project, it's not about the algorithms, it's not using the latest tools and so on and so forth. It is about the people that you serve and the team that builds the product. With that, I will say thank you and